It's hard to sell without buyers, so here we'll take a look at the three main buyer personas and what drives them during the Diagnostic Manager sale. Also, one of the buyer personas is the key user persona, that of the SharePoint administrator. Visibility into SharePoint is a double-edged sword. On one side, if you're selling to a SharePoint administrator or someone who administrates SharePoint as part of their job responsibilities and is not a full-time SharePoint administrator, they might like the benefits that Diagnostic Manager brings to troubleshooting. However, the other side of the coin is that they might be the person who's actually causing the issue. They're not looking at SharePoint. They're not looking at the server resources. They're not able to check on the network or the SQL performance. So you have to be careful not to overpromise to a SharePoint administrator, again, or a person acting in that role, because they might not want their IT manager to have insight into the troubleshooting and all of the resources that Diagnostic Manager can highlight. However, with them, what you can do is you can highlight the thresholds and automatic alerting, and this should work either way because it'll either take items off of that administrator's plate and give them more time to do their main job. Also, another strong message with the administrator is the ability to identify the issues before receiving a call from the business users, and there's not anyone who doesn't like that. Also, you can tell the administrator that with the reporting functionality, they're able to communicate up the chain and provide them information without having to search for it across all of the different systems. Now let's talk about the IT director. So this person's usually the person who has the budget, and a majority of the time, hopefully, is looking not only at Diagnostic Manager, but many of our other products. So really, for them, they're concerned about the relationships with the broad user community. They don't want their systems to affect performance. They don't want to have the additional phone call from the end users who are complaining not only about the performance, but about the response of the SharePoint administrator. Also, the IT director is concerned about resources, not just the server, SQL, and technical ones, but actual human capital. So if you're providing the insight into all of these different systems, Diagnostic Manager can provide less people to do the same amount of work or allow people to focus on work that's more important than just monitoring the health. Finally, we have the network administrator, and they could be the greatest asset or the biggest saboteur. It depends on the size of the organization. Sometimes this person is the SharePoint administrator, and sometimes they're in a federated IT organization and they're completely separate. They might not even know each other's names because they've never had to talk to each other. So here they may have implemented a larger performance monitoring system like System Center for Microsoft or SolarWinds, and they say, well, that's good enough. We can see the performance of the servers. Who needs to see the performance of SharePoint? But at the same time, they might be responsible for all the systems. So the sell could be that with Diagnostic Manager sending information to these other systems, which yes, it can do, then they have a full picture, and now the IT director and their IT manager don't have to ask them to fill that blank page on their rotating screen or get a report from the SharePoint administrator. So all in all, the SharePoint administrator, IT director, or network administrator, the best way to understand their perspective is really to demonstrate the product. Don't lead with all of the features, but ask them, what is the biggest pain point? And then you can travel down that road. Remember, a key differentiator for Diagnostic Manager is the ability to identify SharePoint as a farm, be able to do page performance and web part performance, and have the ability to look at all aspects, network, SQL, and SharePoint from one location. So it's a balancing act, depending on who you're working with, of what areas you want to focus on, because they might not want to expose themselves to their leadership as not performing the health that diagnostic manager can make so easy.